For decades, millions of television fans believed they knew everything about Barbara Feldon and the woman she played on Get Smart. She was calm, elegant, intelligent, and always one step ahead of Maxwell Smart, while chaos exploded around them. But behind the comedy, Barbara Feldon was quietly dealing with fear, pressure, loneliness, and career decisions that could have changed television history forever. Now, at 91, she is finally opening up about the truth behind Agent 99, her complicated relationship with Don Adams, the role she almost rejected, and the surprising reality of what life was really like behind one of television's most beloved spy comedies. Long before Barbara Feldon became one of the most recognizable women on American television, she was building a completely different life in New York City. She had no plans to become trapped inside a long-running Hollywood television series, and she certainly never imagined that one role would follow her for the rest of her life. In fact, one of the biggest truths Barbara later revealed was that she almost walked away from Get Smart before it even began. When producers first approached her about playing Agent 99, Feldon did not immediately jump at the opportunity. At the time, she loved living in New York, loved the energy of the city, and had already built a career there through commercials, theater work, and television appearances. The idea of relocating to Los Angeles and signing a 5-year contract sounded restrictive to her. She later admitted she did not want to be tied down for that long, especially for a comedy series that sounded strange and risky on paper. The concept itself seemed unusual. Television already had successful spy programs inspired by the James Bond craze, especially The Man from UNCLE, which mixed danger, gadgets, and cool sophistication. But Get Smart planned to take those ideas and push them into complete absurdity. Barbara herself remembered reacting to one early spy script by joking, "You're not asking me to repeat this silly script," never imagining that this exact style of humor would soon make her famous worldwide. Producers tested other actresses after Feldon initially hesitated, but something was missing. According to the people involved with the show, nobody else had the exact balance they wanted. Barbara could look glamorous and sophisticated while also playing straight-faced comedy without trying too hard. Eventually, the producers returned and offered a compromise. They told her she would only need to commit for 2 years. Reluctantly, she agreed. That decision changed her entire life. What began as hesitation slowly became one of the most iconic casting choices in television history. Feldon later admitted that even in the earliest days of filming, nobody fully understood how massive the show would become. The first morning she met Don Adams on set, there was no magical instant friendship or emotional connection. In fact, their first concern was something much more awkward: height. Barbara was nearly 5'9", while Adams was noticeably shorter. That issue became an ongoing behind-the-scenes operation throughout the series. If they filmed on a beach, Don dug a hole in the sand for Barbara to stand in. If they stood on a hill, Barbara positioned herself downhill. Sometimes she wore no shoes during close-ups just to make the height difference less obvious. Yet despite those awkward adjustments, something unexpected happened once the cameras rolled. Feldon later explained that acting with Don Adams felt effortless because his energy completely drove every scene forward. She described him as propulsive, saying all she had to do was climb aboard and the scene would take off like a rocket. Their chemistry on screen became immediate, even if their real-life relationship stayed distant at first. Audiences believed Max and 99 were perfect together, but Barbara later confessed that off-camera they rarely even had conversations during the original 5-year run of the show. As Get Smart became one of the biggest comedy hits on television, Barbara Feldon suddenly found herself living inside a strange contradiction. On screen, Agent 99 looked completely confident, intelligent, and emotionally in control. She could outsmart villains, survive dangerous missions, and rescue Maxwell Smart from disaster almost every week. Off-screen, however, Feldon later admitted she was still struggling with insecurity, pressure, and the exhausting need to prove herself in Hollywood. One of the most painful truths she revealed years later was how close she came to losing the role almost immediately after production began. Only 2 weeks into filming the series, Feldon was quietly pulled aside by one of the producers and given shocking news. The head of the show's sponsor wanted her fired. The reason had nothing to do with her acting ability or chemistry with Don Adams. Months earlier, Barbara had appeared in a short Revlon roll-on deodorant commercial. The sponsor's CEO believed audiences would connect her face with a competing deodorant product and feared it would hurt sales of the sponsor's soap brand. Feldon later said she personally pleaded to keep the role because she already understood how important Agent 99 could become for her career. Revlon even promised never to air the commercial again, but the executive reportedly refused to back down. Every day Barbara arrived on set, believing NBC might remove her from the show at any moment. That fear hung over her while the series slowly exploded in popularity. Then the situation became almost absurdly ironic. Once Get Smart climbed to the #1 spot in television ratings, the same executive who wanted her fired suddenly invited Barbara to his office for a publicity photograph. Feldon later admitted she deeply enjoyed the irony of that moment because it perfectly captured how unpredictable Hollywood could be. One executive decision nearly erased one of television's most iconic female characters before audiences even had time to embrace her. As the show grew, Agent 99 became far more important than even Barbara originally understood. At first glance, the series looked like pure silliness built around gadgets, catchphrases, and chaos. But over time, Feldon realized the character was quietly ahead of her era. Years later, she openly admitted that Agent 99 was more feminist than she herself was when the series began. While many women on television during the 1960s existed mainly to support male leads, 99 regularly saved Max, corrected his mistakes, and often appeared smarter than everyone around her. She was glamorous without being helpless, and intelligent without losing warmth. Feldon later said she eventually caught up to the character emotionally by the time the series ended. Even the smallest details of Agent 99 became part of television history. Fans constantly asked whether the character secretly had a real name. For years, rumors circulated that her name was Susan Hilton because of one episode reference. Feldon later settled the mystery after reconnecting with writer Buck Henry. According to Henry, 99 truly had no name at all. She was simply 99. Originally, the writers considered calling her 100 because Maxwell Smart's number was 86 and they wanted her ranking above his. But they eventually decided 100 sounded too mechanical and not feminine enough. Barbara herself later joked that, "Look out, 99!" sounded much better than "Look out, 100!" The series also accidentally predicted the future in surprising ways. At the time, Maxwell Smart's shoe phone looked ridiculous to audiences because portable communication devices barely existed. Yet decades later, Barbara visited CIA headquarters in Langley and discovered intelligence agents had actually studied gadgets from the series while trying to create similar technology in real life. Feldon described standing beside fictional props from Get Smart while also seeing genuine KGB devices that had killed people. One of the biggest surprises Barbara Feldon revealed later in life was how emotionally disconnected the cast sometimes felt during the original run of Get Smart. Audiences spent years believing the chemistry between Barbara and Don Adams reflected a deep off-screen friendship or even romance. In reality, Feldon admitted that during the 5 years they worked together, they were mostly professional co-workers who rarely socialized or had meaningful personal conversations. That truth shocked many longtime fans because Max and 99 looked inseparable on television. Their timing felt effortless, their flirtation looked natural, and eventually the characters even married and had twins during the series' continuation. But according to Barbara, once filming stopped each day, both actors largely returned to separate lives. Part of the problem came from the pressure surrounding Don Adams himself. By the time Get Smart became a massive hit, Adams was carrying enormous responsibility as the face of the show. His comedic rhythm controlled almost every scene, and Feldon openly praised his talent years later. She explained that acting beside him was easy because his energy constantly propelled scenes forward. But outside of filming, Adams could also be distant and complicated. Barbara later hinted that much of his personality was hidden beneath the fast-talking comic image audiences loved. During production, they respected each other professionally, but never formed the kind of emotional bond fans imagined. What makes the story more touching is what happened nearly 2 decades later. After years without contact, Feldon reunited with Adams for a Get Smart reunion project. To her surprise, the distance that once existed between them completely disappeared. Barbara described it as if invisible seeds of affection had been planted long ago and suddenly bloomed later in life. The friendship that never fully developed during the original series finally emerged when both actors were older and no longer trapped inside the pressure of weekly television production. According to Feldon, that friendship lasted until the end of Don Adams's life. In many ways, the emotional closeness audiences believed existed during the 1960s only truly became real years afterward. Barbara also began reflecting more honestly about fame itself as she got older. During the peak of Get Smart, she was receiving Emmy nominations, magazine attention, and public recognition everywhere she went. Yet she later confessed that success felt strangely disorienting rather than exciting. She said she barely even processed her Emmy nomination because she was overwhelmed trying to adjust to sudden fame. At the same time, she quietly felt embarrassed because nearly everyone else connected to the show won awards, while she did not. Feldon eventually concluded she had been nominated in the wrong category anyway because she viewed herself as a supporting co-star rather than the main lead. Even then, she admitted it still felt awkward watching others from the show collect trophies while 99 did not. That insecurity reflected a much deeper issue Barbara struggled with throughout her younger years. Looking back decades later, she said she spent too much time worrying about being accepted, being successful enough, or being considered valuable enough by Hollywood standards. She became trapped in the exhausting search for perfection, something she later realized was impossible. One of the most honest truths she shared at 91 was that younger people often cannot absorb wisdom because they are emotionally incapable of understanding it yet. If she could speak to her younger self, she said she would simply tell her to enjoy life more lightly and stop obsessing over approval. Her reflections became especially emotional when discussing motherhood. In Get Smart, Agent 99 eventually became a mother to twins, but Barbara herself never had children. When asked if she regretted that choice, her answer surprised many people because it carried no bitterness at all. Feldon calmly explained that life simply unfolded differently for her. She believed there were many ways to build happiness and fulfillment. She openly admitted she probably would have been happy with children, but she was also genuinely happy without them. As Barbara Feldon moved further away from the height of her television fame, she began revealing another truth many fans never expected. Some of the most dramatic moments of her life happened far away from Hollywood cameras. While audiences remembered her as the calm and intelligent Agent 99, Feldon privately experienced relationships, disappointments, and emotional confusion that deeply shaped the person she later became. Those experiences eventually became the foundation for her memoir, Getting Smarter, a book she described not simply as a celebrity autobiography, but as a story about fantasy, manipulation, and finally understanding herself honestly. At the center of the memoir was a glamorous Frenchman Barbara met years before Get Smart transformed her life. Feldon admitted she became swept away by the fantasy surrounding him because he represented everything she imagined romance should be when she was younger. Sophisticated, mysterious, European, and emotionally intense, he seemed to embody the dream world she had carried since girlhood. But after marrying him, Barbara slowly realized she barely knew the man at all. What followed became one of the most disturbing periods of her life. Feldon later described moments when she genuinely believed she was being followed by the KGB long before she ever played a television spy battling chaos on screen. Looking back, Barbara admitted the relationship taught her painful lessons about sociopaths, emotional manipulation, and her own willingness to live inside fantasy instead of reality. That honesty surprised many fans, because Feldon rarely presented herself publicly as vulnerable during her television years. Yet in later interviews, she openly acknowledged that much of her younger life was driven by a desperate need for approval, romance, and perfection. She realized that while Agent 99 always seemed emotionally clear and capable, Barbara herself often felt uncertain and emotionally overwhelmed. At the same time, Feldon was also navigating an entertainment industry that treated women very differently than it does today. In interviews promoting her memoir, she briefly revealed that some of the juiciest stories from her early career involved mistreatment by powerful producers long before the Me Too movement existed. Unlike many actresses who stayed silent forever, Barbara later spoke carefully but honestly about those experiences. She explained that the worst situations happened in New York rather than Hollywood and involved men abusing professional power over young actresses trying to build careers. Although she avoided turning her memoir into a scandal-driven book, her comments revealed how much pressure actresses quietly endured during that era while still trying to appear composed in public. Ironically, one of the things that kept Barbara emotionally grounded through those difficult periods was intellectual curiosity. Long before she became Agent 99, she had already proven herself far more academically driven than people assumed. While working as a showgirl, she was invited to compete on the $64,000 question. Producers loved the contrast between glamorous costumes and serious intelligence, almost treating her like a social experiment to see whether a beautiful showgirl could actually be intellectual. Feldon chose Shakespeare as her category and spent 3 intense months memorizing enormous amounts of literary trivia. She eventually won the grand prize, but later admitted the money disappeared within only 6 weeks. By the time Barbara Feldon reached her 90s, she no longer felt trapped by the image of Agent 99. Instead of treating Get Smart like perfect nostalgia, she began speaking honestly about how the series changed her personally. Feldon admitted that Agent 99 was actually more confident and independent than she was in real life during the early years of the show. While the character trusted herself completely, Barbara spent much of her younger life searching for approval from Hollywood, relationships, and fame. Over time, however, she slowly grew into the same confidence that made 99 so beloved. Unlike many classic television stars, Feldon never became bitter about aging or fading fame. She understood that audiences change, but she was surprised that younger generations kept discovering Get Smart through reruns and streaming. Even decades later, fans still call her 99 in public. Her feelings toward Don Adams also softened over time. Although they were never especially close during the original series, they eventually formed a genuine friendship years later that lasted until his death. What was your favorite thing about Barbara Feldon and Get Smart? Agent 99's intelligence, her chemistry with Max, or the unforgettable spy gadgets? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more classic Hollywood stories and television secrets.